Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 32 of the Hammer and Nayls Show. I'm Jack Hammer, and to my side over here is my co-host, Jessie Naylor. How you doing tonight, Jessie?
I am doing good, Jack. Jack, why don't you let them know why we were late? It's because we were watching that amazing gift that I put together of you. If you're watching this backstage, I'm just saying, Jack, go ahead. Just throw it up. Come on. 1 second, please. There.
Hey, that's pretty good stuff right there. That almost we wanted to do that at the beginning. We were going to use that as our intro tonight, but we figured that we might get caught by YouTube for the copyright infringement with the dancing because it looks so much like MC Hammer. What a jerk, Jessie. But yeah, that was a good time Tuesday night there, and it was pretty good. I showed my girlfriend saw that last night, and she actually saw me practicing it too. So let's just say she was she was less than impressed. I don't know how, but look at the dance moves.
Oh, his now ex-girlfriend. Yeah, it's great.
I was wondering why she told me to go get some milk, and then the door was locked when I got home. Yeah, but the good stuff. It's been outside of the dance. The dance moves actually are a good thing because they came as a result of me talking to on Twitter with everybody knows East Bay Chris and Spider Rico. I don't know if anybody follows him, but he's a 49er guy. And anyway, we were going back and forth after the 49ers game, won that game against Los Angeles. And I mentioned it. I was like, hey, there was one of them put a picture of MC Hammer with my head on top. I said, hey, if 49ers win these next two games, I'll do that dance after the game for you guys. And so I paid up on Tuesday night, and it was a fun time.
You probably felt pretty confident going into it, like, I'm good. I'm not going to have to do this dance.
Of course I felt confident. Look how good it came out. Why would I feel confident? I mean, that's man.
Too good.
Yeah. Good stuff. But yeah, big win on Sunday for the 49ers over Minnesota, 34-26, excuse me. Really, really good matchup there. And we're now, like Jessie and I were saying before we started the show, we're on to Seattle this week. But before we get there, there still continues to be talk around Trey Lance and so on and so forth. That's our title of our show tonight. I did a little bit different than normal, but wanted to do a bunch of discussion on Trey Lance to start this off. And the question is, why did the 49ers draft Trey Lance? That's our first question, and I'll let you go first, Jessie.
Yeah, so this stemmed from a Twitter back and forth with you and was it Vish, where you guys were talking about that, and it was really you just asking questions. But I think that there's still this misconception out there. In my opinion, it's a misconception that Jimmy Garoppolo gets injured all the time, and that's the only reason that he was brought here, that they traded all that to go get Trey Lance. And I just don't think that's the case. I didn't think that was the case when it happened. And I don't think it's the case now. I just feel like the reason that he was brought here, yes, the injuries play a part in that, but I don't think Shanahan likes having Jimmy G be his quarterback long-term. I don't think Jimmy G can do the things mentally or physically that Shanahan expects from his quarterbacks. And I think you see it quite frequently. We've seen it pop up, obviously, very famously this year in the Chicago game, and then again last game. But that wasn't just this year. This is an ongoing thing with Shanahan where he really rips Jimmy apart. And so to me, I think it has just as much to do with Jimmy's play or lack of production or just lack of overall mental capacity and or arm strength as much as it does with the actual injuries. What say you?
Yeah, I think it's two things. I do think that some of it is the production or lack thereof. But the main, there's two things for me. Number one being the injuries. I think injuries do play a big part in this. I think if he hadn't been injured in 18 and 19, in 20, especially in 20, I think that team probably gets to the playoffs, and we're looking at a team trying to get into the playoffs for a third year in a row. If he had been able to stay healthy all year, if he doesn't get injured there in week 2, um, and at the same time, I think that they might be looking to move on from him from a salary cap standpoint because his number is high, and it's not a I don't think it's a situation where you want to extend him for he's going to be he's already 30, right? He's 30 now. He's going to be 31 next year. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how far you want to extend a guy that's 31. He's probably right around what he's going to be, and why would you want to lock yourself in for another 5 years on a guy who isn't really going to get better, even though he's decent, but where you can go ahead and you have this rookie, you can lock in a rookie contract for 4 or 5 years. It's going to allow you to reset the salary cap because they have Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel, and they have big contracts coming up. Trent Williams' deal is going to be coming down the road, and even though it's already signed, but his contract in terms of the cap hits are going to be increasing as they go through, and so on and so forth. So I think it was an injury part of it. I think it was the salary, and I think some of it was that he wasn't going to get better than what they've already done. And by 2022, they were going to have maxed out what they could get out of him.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot that goes into it. I just, it sounds like we really both don't agree that it's just the injury, but that's definitely what the national media is throwing out there, right? Oh, if Jimmy was healthy, they wouldn't even be looking at doing this. And it's like, well, there's a lot of things that actually go into it. The age, like you said, the contract, like you said, and his on-field play. I feel like there's a lot more to it.
Yeah, I don't know about the national media. I haven't heard a whole lot of that being thrown out. You might know more than me. I haven't heard that a whole lot, but I know it's been a talking point, but I haven't heard it a lot lately. But if he'd been healthy, maybe we're looking at a different situation. Maybe whatever. I mean, even next year, I'm not. I think he's going to be gone, but I can give you a scenario in which he would be back. It's just a matter of if they want to do that or not.
Well, okay. Let's talk through that.
Yeah. Well, the thought here, and it's they don't want to. They're going to need right now. They're going to need to get some cap space. Correct. So yes. Right now his cap's $27 million. What would you say a good number for Jimmy Garoppolo would be for a salary cap hit? He's a solid starter. I know he's not, maybe a top 5, top whatever, but where would you put him?
I'd say between 18 and 22.
Okay. So let's say you cut it down to 17. That was the number I was thinking. Well, that's only $10 million. The salary cap's going to be going up after next year. So what you do is you take that, you don't reduce his contract, and as far as what he's getting paid would stay the same. What you do is you'd redo a new deal, and you basically add on 2 years after of dead cap hit. You've seen teams do this already, where they just take that contract, make it $17 million cap hit this year, and they have a $5 million cap hit in 2023 and a $5 million in 2024, or however they want to structure it, because they can backload it after. It's just the way they're basically just setting up their dead cap down the road, and then that way they could keep them if they wanted to.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that Jack, if they do that with Lance still being here, I think that would be and we're going to talk about which one is bigger, but I think that would be the biggest disaster that this team could do.
I think it would be fantastic. I think it'd be fantastic because that would give us so many stories to be writing about also.
Oh yeah. Yeah, but you're right about that.
Just the reaction from the fan base alone. I don't expect that to happen, but that is a way that you could work it out. Even like Moses says, 10 mil. Okay. So you take the 17 and you spread it out over a couple of years, what have you, especially with how high the salary cap is supposed to go up in a couple of years. You're talking about a drop in the bucket with some of the other deals that they're going to have. I mean, think about this. I was thinking about it earlier, and I have an article that's going to be coming up here pretty soon on the Flyers defensive line and how much better they've been playing. But think about this for a second. Everybody's frustrated by Jimmy Garoppolo getting $27 million next year and how they need to get rid of him partly because of the $27 million. Meanwhile, there's a defensive lineman on their team right now that next year is going to have a salary cap hit of $20 million. And he's got 3 hits on the quarterback this year, 2 quarterback sacks, and you're going to pay that player $20 million. So just think about what Jimmy Garoppolo brings to the 49ers, even though whatever you want to say about how good he is or bad he is, he's still putting more. His production is more valuable to the 49ers than what we're seeing from the guy that's getting $20 million to make a couple, 3 hits on the quarterback this year.
Yeah, you're right about that. That's very, very true. Very true.
And the problem with that contract is they're stuck with that contract for a couple of years unless they do what we just talked about, which is restructuring them, kicking some money down the road, and it's a tough deal. I think I don't know what their cap number is for this year, or I know it's 20 million. I think that cap next year, if they release him, is 16 million. I mean, so there's really no benefit to getting rid of Armstead after this year. You've got to wait for a couple of years down the road to do anything with him. But
yeah, I think it's 2023 is when you have that first out, if I remember correctly. I'd have to go look at it again.
Yeah, well, I think you can do it this year because this is the first year where he has the salary cap number is higher than the dead cap, but it's not much of a savings unless you split it up over the 2 years, like as a June 1 cut. Foreigners don't like to do those, though. They don't like to push money into future years on deals like that, when they're not going to get anything out of the player.
Ooh, here you go. Actually, if for the next going into 2022, if they cut them post June 1st, it's only $5 million. 2022, 2023, and 2024.
Let me look at it really quick. I'll tell you if you're right or wrong. I think you're wrong. I'm kidding. I'm not.
Same thing. Well, no, you know what's funny? I'm glad that you are looking at it because there was the one where I thought it was one way, and then you and someone else had brought up Spotrac, which I usually use over the cap, and you said, well, listen, it's different because of X, Y, and Z, and I didn't understand that. So I'm glad you're looking at it.
Yeah, so his 2022 salary cap hit is $20 million. His dead cap is 16.5. So I don't know where anybody's getting 5 from.
Go to
that's what I'm seeing on Spotrac. And then
okay,
and then so at 16.5 million, if you decide that you're going to give him a June 1 release, that 16.5 million, just take that 16.5 million and divide it by 2. If you go
to over the cap, they give you the designations where you can switch it. So what am I missing on this?
You're misreading that as well, because if you look at 2022, that's the year we're looking at, right? The number on the left is their dead cap. So the dead cap on there says 16,500,000, right? So the dead cap is the dead cap if they release him before 2022, after the season's over with, is 16.5 million. The savings is the number next to it, which is 3.5. It's not until.
Can I share my screen? I just want to show you this, and you tell me what I genuinely want to know, because I've done this before where I've messed it up, and I want to know what I'm looking at.
Throw it up; it'll be easier than us just talking about numbers without people being able to see it.
So this is what I'm seeing.
Okay. Oh, I got to put it on there. Sorry, hold on. Okay. Bad pilot. Can you guys see that? Let me bring it up. There we go. Okay.
Cut post June, $5 million in dead money is what I'm seeing.
I don't think that's correct.
If I go pre-June, it's 16. You see that?
Yeah, I don't think that. I don't think that's right. Because unless they changed it, I thought that it was only prorated over the next 2 years. But even if you do it the way that you're talking about, you're looking at you're looking at dead hit. That 5 million isn't 5 million for 1 year. It's 5 million over the next 3. I guess
3 years.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the way that the dead cap works is the dead cap, if you do it, gets spread out over the remaining portion of the contract. If that's the case, then it's 5 million. I thought it was only over that year and the next, in which case it'd be higher. But let's go with this number, 5 million. Okay, 5 million, you get a $15 million cap savings. Then, if you're willing to eat, $5 million for the next 3 years, then you go ahead and do it. If that's the way that it plays out.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is 16 and a half. This is how it's spread out. Now this makes sense. It's 5, 5, 5, and 1.5. That's how it would play out. That's how you get to 16 and a half.
Yeah, because that's 16 and a half right there. And I was
Gotcha.
under the assumption that it's basically you take the dead cap, you split it in half, which would be it's
That's what
prorated
I thought.
over the
That's
next
what
year.
I
So
thought.
uh,
I don't know. I
either
need a
way,
capologist. Dang it.
yeah, there's based off of my understanding of it, it would those numbers are incorrect. But either way, I don't think the 49ers would want to take on you know 5 years of that or 4 years, 3 years of it. I don't know. I just said the 49ers would do it with Jimmy Garoppolo, right? But maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So let's move on. You have anything else you want to talk about with Trey Lance, though? I kind of got us off track. Trey Lance.
No.
Why did the
Sorry.
49ers? Why did the 49ers draft Trey Lance? They drafted him because Garoppolo's injured, his play, and there's a number of things. I'm more on you're more on the play. I'm more on the injury and the cap over the next couple years. I think we're both kind of hitting on areas. I don't
Yeah.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with you enough to have a debate over it. That's partly why when I asked that question to Vish last night, I really just wanted to kind of see what somebody else other than myself would think.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. And then our next question, and this was something that came up separately. This was actually one of the questions that I was asked when I did my mailbag for this week. Somebody asked me this question. I didn't put it in my column. I didn't realize he was asking me in that. I just thought it was just a random question. But he said, basically the question is, what is the worst move that the 49ers have made? Is it paying Garoppolo what they've paid him, or is it what they used in the capital they used in trading up for Trey Lance?
Jack, this one's tough because, and I hate to skirt out of it, but to me it's incomplete, right? Because we don't know what Trey Lance is going to end up being. Now, what I will say is, I feel like on the surface, trading up for Trey Lance and giving all that capital would be the answer, just because that is a lot to give up for any quarterback. But the flip side of that is we just don't know what he's going to end up being. We know that he has to be very good in order to live up to that contract. He's going to have to be better than Mac Jones. He's going to have to be better than Justin Fields. And he's going to have to be significantly better, because even if he's slightly better, you still are factoring in all of the trade value that they gave up. So it's tough. I'm usually very definitive in my answers, but on this one, it's just, to me, it's a little too early to give a for sure.
Okay. I'm going to go with what they gave up to get Trey Lance. I'll just go. That's my feeling on it. It is they gave up two. We've talked about this a lot. I didn't think that there was any of the quarterbacks in this draft that were worth what they used to trade up to get a quarterback, because they could have sat where they sat and they could have had Justin Fields fall to him, Mac Jones, one of those guys that was there for him, because by the time they made the trade up to 3, you knew that they had a choice between Lance, Jones, and Fields. You knew one of those 3 was going to fall all the way to him. And so giving up as much as they gave up, I don't think that's worth it. If you're going to give up that kind of capital, you're doing it for a guy who's a proven player. At least that's the way that I would do it. So I would say the worst move is Lance. The Garoppolo piece, the reason why I don't feel like that was a bad move was, once that trade was made, you knew what his contract was going to be. His contract wasn't a surprise, because he was when they made that trade, he was up it was in his contract year, and you knew worst case scenario they were going to franchise tag him. Right. So really what they did in the end was they gave him the franchise tag for year 1. They gave him a franchise tag for year 2. That's basically what they did. And then they kind of gave a slight increment each year following, but they built it in such a way, by doing it as a contract instead of doing the salary cap, they were able to take a lower cap hit in 18, or a higher cap hit in 18. So they'd have a lower cap hit in 19. And then it went on from there. But they designed it so they could get out of that after year 3 or 4 if he wasn't performing. That's where we are. So I don't have a problem with that. I don't think it's held them back from really building anything with the roster. I think their biggest mistakes in terms of roster building have been some of the missteps they've done in the draft. So going back to the Lance trade up.
Yeah, I don't know. This one's tough for me because the flip side of that is yes, like we look at it and say, okay, yeah, Mac Jones at 12 and Fields at 10 or whatever they would have had to trade up for, that probably ends up being better value, but it's all hindsight because a lot of people thought all four would go early. And there's still a lot of people that said, well, Lance would have gone to the Falcons. So if that's the case, if Lance was really your guy, I'm always under the impression that if there's somebody that you really, really want, you really, really covet, it's never too much. It's never too early to take somebody. It's never too much. If that's the guy that you really, really want, then make it happen. You have to go get that player. So if that's who they really coveted out of those guys, and Mac and Mac and Fields were distant second and third, then it's not too much. We look at it and say, well, the gap's probably not going to be big enough. But a lot of that, like I said, is hindsight for them. If Lance was the player that they zeroed in on, then you have to go get him, right? And it's okay. So I don't know. For me, it's a toss up.
Yeah, no, I understand. I think here's why I think we differ on this. It's not really a think. I think we both kind of know why I differ with you on this.
Yeah.
But the difference in is that Mac Jones is the guy that I think, and I still do, and I did long before the draft. Mac Jones is the best quarterback in the draft. Mac Jones would have allowed them to reset their number now. Unfortunately, it wouldn't have allowed them to really do anything in terms of their money situation and with free agency, because most of the free agents were gone by that point. But I think if Mac Jones had been drafted by the 49ers, Mac Jones would be the quarterback today, and Jimmy Garoppolo would be somewhere else, and all that would have happened. But I think I've mentioned this on our show before, but I'll say it again anyway. I think that if the 49ers were going to get Mac Jones, the plan there was they had to get Andy Dalton first. Because if you remember, the reports were that Garoppolo was pretty frustrated not Garoppolo. Shanahan was really frustrated with the fact that they didn't get Dalton signed and I think that the thought there was they needed to have another veteran in the building. Maybe all along it was going to be get the veteran in and have to lower your cap number and still bring in Lance but you were going to. I think all along they knew that Lance wasn't going to start this year, or whoever if he was the quarterback, right? But I think Jones is the better quarterback. I think Jones is going to be the better quarterback over their careers. But I understand why I understand 49er fans wanting it to be Lance, or why 49er fans in general, or not even 49er fans, but media folks that really like Trey Lance. I can understand why they do. And I can understand what they're missing with Mac Jones.
Yeah, for sure. And, the other thing, though, too, is just to be fair, I don't know if paying Garoppolo really was a bad move, because they had outs at every point in the contract. What the bad move was not replacing him when you had a chance with a guy like Tom Brady, or trading earlier to get a different player. You know what I mean? Like, they made bad moves after the fact, but paying him at that time, pre-injury, and really giving up a second-round pick was not that bad, because you kept giving yourselves out. I mean, after 2019 and going to the Super Bowl, they had an out then. Then they had an out last year, and they had an out this. You know what I mean? So they've always had these outs that they just haven't taken advantage of. So I don't know if paying Garoppolo – I'm not a Garoppolo guy, but I also don't think that was necessarily a bad move because of the way that they set up the contract. The bad part was keeping him for so long.
Yeah, and we had this. You and I had this discussion with Sunil during the off season. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that, but we had that discussion, and the only thing that that deal, the bad part about that deal was, it was really going to tie him up for 3 to 4 years, really, because the dead cap, if they had gone their dead cap money, even a year ago, I think it was. If they'd gotten rid of Garoppolo, they were going to still be hit with a pretty big number if they got rid of Garoppolo and brought in Brady. If they were to release him, I think that number was still going to be really high. I could be wrong, but I think that was going to be a pretty big cap hit for them, a lot of dead cap. I think that played into them making the decision that they did. With skipping, not taking I think when they were looking at Brady, they were looking at it wasn't worth as crazy as it sounds. Brady wasn't worth $25 million or 15, whatever 20. Let's just say it was 25 for numbers. I don't remember what his hit was last year, but he wasn't worth the 25 million that he would have been paid, plus the 15 to 20 million dead cap they would have had if they had released Garoppolo at that point. So you're looking at a quarterback of 40. I think when they made that decision, I think that kind of played into it. Whether I agree with them or not, I mean, I think if you had Brady last year, this team's much better than they were, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't remember the dead cap back then. I thought it was lower, but either way, I mean, I don't know. I just, like I said, I don't think the Jimmy contract itself was really all that bad. I just don't.
Yeah,
it's bad now, right? Like right now to keep, again, it's not the contract that's bad. It's hanging on to him through all of these ebbs and flows where you could have dumped him. Like right now, rip the Band-Aid off. You should have gone with, I love what the Patriots did. They got rid of the problem before it became a problem. They should have done that with Jimmy G. That's my opinion. They didn't do that. And now we look at it and say, oh, he's getting paid too much. It's, bad contract, but they had the opportunity to get out. They just chose not to. So blame the decision-making for keeping him, not the contract itself is the way that I see it.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And that's a really good way to put it. Real quick, before this topic, we can talk about a little bit more. I do have a couple of things to mention on it. But James says, the whole situation has been very peculiar. Darnold, Stafford, et cetera, and then the reports on draft day that Rodgers was going to San Francisco. All those things kind of playing into it. I don't know if I don't know about the reports ever saying that he was actually going to San Francisco. I think the reports on draft day were that the 49ers were calling about it.
Yeah, I thought it was the day before technically that they'd reached out and they didn't really hear anything, so they just let it go.
Yeah, I mean Well, we know that even the Darnold thing. I think the Darnold thing was kicking tires. They wanted to find out what it was going to cost for them to pick him up. And I kind of similar. I don't think that was he was. I think the Stafford thing maybe there was a little bit more to that, but. Darnold, I don't put a whole lot of that one. The Stafford one, and then you look at Flacco and so on and so forth. Those guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know. I just look at this as I just think that the 49ers would have been better off with Jones. And I just think that he's going to be the guy. I got a lot of friends in the comment section that agree with me. I see over there, but. Well, and Piner says Jones has proven to work with much less in New England with Bourne, Myers, Aguilar, and Henry. But why settle for less if you're if you are in a Super Bowl? Limitations will bite you in the rear. Lance makes more sense. I just disagree with that, and I'll explain. Let me tell you why I disagree with that. The teams that win the Super Bowl based on quarterbacks making plays in the pocket. I understand. Mahomes runs around, right? Makes some plays off schedule. But Mahomes won the Super Bowl making plays in the pocket. The deep throw down the field to Hill, that was in the pocket. Deep throw down the right sideline over Sherman from the pocket. He makes some plays from the pocket. He makes the well plays outside of it, but he can play from the confines of the pocket and play well. I'm not sure if we're going to see that from Trey Lance. I understand that Trey Lance isn't a scrambler in the general sense of what a lot of people think. He doesn't run around like a chicken with his head cut off. But the issue that I do have with Trey Lance is I don't know if he has the ability to be consistent enough from the pocket to say that he's going to get you to a Super Bowl. Whereas a guy like Mac Jones won't.
Yeah, I mean, we could do this all day. But for time's sake, I'll let you get I'll let you get your take off. Everybody knows in the chat that I disagree. I disagree. But at the same time, I respect it. And let me say this about Jack too. Let me be clear about this. Because there are a lot of people that are giving revisionist history right now. They're seeing what's happening with Mac Jones. and they're saying, oh, see, we should have gone that route. Everybody knew he was the most pro ready, yada, yada, yada. Most of those people didn't have Mac Jones as the guy that they should have taken or even waited for at 12 and gone for. Now everybody wants to jump on the bandwagon. I will say this about Jack. He's remained consistent. And right now, what he predicted looks really, really good, or what his projections were for these quarterbacks looks really, really good, especially when it comes to Mac Jones. That's the one guy that he definitely fell in love with early. And right now that's proven to be right. So I want to give credit to Jack for being really the only guy that I remember in 49ers Twitter out of, some of the heavy hitters and guys that make content or have a heavy following. He's the only guy that I remember pre-draft being staunch and saying that Mac Jones was the right guy. So I want to make sure that I'm clear about that, because he's the only one. Everybody else can fly a kite because nobody said that. And now they want to say, oh, well, see, it was obvious. And, Trey Lance and I was a fielded. No, none of that stuff. He was right about what he said. Mac Jones is definitely better early on than what I ever, projected. To me, it's too early to even evaluate Lance because we really haven't seen him. And the only thing that I've really been right about so far was the way that Fields would look. Again, it's still his rookie year. Who knows how he'll project, and the way that Zach Wilson looks. So, you know what I mean? But as far as the Lance thing, it's an incomplete, and I was definitely wrong on Mac Jones. So let's be clear about that.
Yeah, and real quick, the funny thing about the whole my deal with liking Mac Jones is that I wasn't even going to pay attention to him a whole lot because I was kind of buying into the whole he's just a product of Alabama narrative. Mm-hmm. But it was one of those things where, I started doing those film breakdowns and really get into it with Grant. And I was like, I'm going to take a look at this guy, just see what's going on, because we weren't even going to talk about him. And I started watching him, and I watched like 3 games by myself. And then I was like, holy moly, this guy's. And then I went back and I watched the game from 2019 to see if I was crazy with what I was seeing in 2020. And I was even more impressed at that point. And then that's when I told Grant we need to do a video on this guy and start talking about him. But anyway, yeah, and I understand.
Yeah,
it's fun.
Yeah. The other thing too, real quick about Mac is I thought this, like what he looks like now, was basically what he would look like, once he hit his stride. So if this is where he's at now and he can somehow improve on this, then good for him. Maybe he can break into that top 10. I still hold my reserves, but what he is right now can win. It definitely can win as long as you've got the right pieces in place. And if he can somehow reach another level with that, then it would be hard to say that Mac Jones couldn't have been the pick, even at 3 and especially staying at 12. I just don't think that there's much more of a ceiling than what he's got, so we'll see.
Yeah. I think I know they put us, I'm 99.9% sure I put this on Twitter, that my comp for Mac Jones is Matt Ryan.
Which would be, if he ends up being Matt Ryan, that would be fine.
I mean, and that was also with me thinking that he should have been the fit for the 49ers. But who knows what's going to happen? Let's move off of Mac Jones, because nobody wants to talk Mac Jones. They all want to talk about Trey Lance, and I've told everybody that Trey Lance sucks. No, but I didn't say that. But watch, somebody's going to take the video, and that's all it's going to be on. Somebody's Twitter thing.
Well, you also had Trey Lance over Zach Wilson and Fields. So a lot of people are going back and saying, oh, he doesn't like Trey Lance, and and it can be perceived that way if people are just jumping into your Twitter timeline. But reality is, he was your number 2 guy behind Mac for us to take at 3. So you know what I mean? It's not like you hate him.
No, not at all. And I didn't even. And I keep saying it. I didn't want the 49ers to trade up to 3. I was excited when they traded to 3 because it gave us a lot of things to talk about, and we knew at that point that it was going to be quarterback. But as far as making the trade up, I didn't like the trade up.
Yeah.
Enough of that. Enough of the quarterbacks. Come on now. All right. Missing pieces. So we're getting into the game real quick here. How are the 49ers going to manage up in Seattle without Deebo Samuel? Let's start off there first.
Yeah, well, first of all, that explosion is gone, and that's a little worrisome. The big play, in my opinion, is out of it. You don't have Mostert, you don't have Deebo, so they're just gonna have to be very efficient, which isn't necessarily a bad thing because they've proven that they can control the clock and be methodical the last few games. They're gonna need one of those long drives, especially early in this game, to set the tone. And so, running the ball obviously is going to be one. I would probably get Ayuk involved a little bit in maybe some of those running plays, not the way that they're using Debo where they're lining him up in the backfield, but maybe some of those jet sweeps they bring back. Use check, I think, as far as some swing passes or what have you are going to have to be involved. And then Kittle's going to have to be big too. Getting him out on those screens, I think, is going to be helpful. I just think it's going to be a lot of dink and dunk, a lot of patience, which is fine. They can definitely win that way. But that big play explosion is definitely not going to be there this week. And that's something that they're going to miss dearly.
Yeah, that is it. And that's the thing is that I put out on Twitter yesterday, they're going to need a big game from Jimmy Garoppolo. And I wasn't even really, I got all kinds of different directions on it. But there's going to be more on his plate this week. There's going to be more on everybody's plate, not just Garoppolo's either. It's going to be, what Deebo Samuel does with his ability to get to the edge, he makes it easier for the linemen. He makes it easier for everybody to block. He really puts more of a stress on your outside guys than it does your interior linemen because they're just mostly trying to cut people off, right? But he just makes everybody around him better because he's just so fast. But I think if you go back to their Week 4 game, they moved the ball pretty well. They moved the ball right down the field the first series, and they had some explosive pass plays on that first series. They got the stupid interception on the second drive, and then they moved the ball again pretty good on their third possession, got stalled out, and then that's when they had to use their punter to try to kick a field goal. And so, I think they moved the ball decent. The more I think about it, the more I think they're going to be okay. It's just that they're not going to be able to put up explosive plays, and so it's going to be a lot more of that grind. They just need to hold on to the football. I agree with you 100% on George Kittle. You've got to get George Kittle on these linebackers, and you've got to be able to hit them. Kittle's been one of those guys who people have been questioning what's going on with George Kittle. And I looked at his numbers today, and I think the reason that his numbers are down is because he's just not getting the ball. The ball's not being thrown down. His target percentage is down. First off, right? He was at like 23.5% of the targets a year ago. He's at 20% this year in the same amount of games. They've thrown the ball less in those 8 games also, not by a great deal, but enough. And so he's still the same guy. I just think they need to get him the ball, and they need to run plays like what we saw them on their first pass play when Garoppolo didn't throw the ball, and just tell Jimmy to throw him the ball. Because I think it's all there for him. I really think that their offense is going to have some grind to it. But if you look at last week's game, there was 3 balls to Brandon Ayuk that were all explosive plays. Mm-hmm. And if they can get that again this week and then grind out the clock with the running game and things like that behind it, I think their offense can give them 20 points, 24 points, which I think will be enough to win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I think they can put up enough points to win the game. It's going to have to be a little bit different. And that's fine. Doesn't mean they can't win for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. How about on the defensive side without Warner?
Okay, so this one's interesting. If it was just without Warner, I would say, hey, nothing really changes. Greenlaw's fine, Aziz Al-Shaair, but it sounds like Greenlaw's not going to play. Marcel Harris, how's he doing with his concussion protocol? What's the update on that?
Well, he's still not practicing.
Okay, yeah. So you might be without 3 of your linebackers. And so what do you do? And I'm going to throw this out there. I think what I would do is run a lot of dime. We saw that a little bit last week, especially on third down and whatnot. But I would also throw out some looks where I have some 5-down linemen. That helps you contain Russell Wilson. You can go 5-2 with four DBs. That can be a base look instead of a 4-3. And I would use that a little bit. I would throw something at them that they're probably not expecting to see. I'm just trying to get my best players on the field. And right now, I have my doubts that going with Hufanga linebacker on base downs is the way to go and throwing dime out there. I'm probably not doing that. I definitely want to see it on third down, but not early downs. And so if my best players are the linemen, especially if D Ford plays, then I'm doing that. That's what I'm going to do. So I don't know if the 49ers are going to do that, but that's what I would personally do. I would go some 5-2 and then mix in Hufanga and some dime packages on second and third downs.
Okay. I would do what you don't want to do. I would play Hufanga. I would play a lot of big nickel, I guess is what they
Mm-hmm.
call it, where you've
Mm-hmm.
got Hufanga playing the third linebacker role. Um, because I think their defensive front, although they're not getting after the quarterback all that great, they're probably not going to sack. They might, shoot the who knows the Seattle's deep offensive line is pretty bad, so they might be able to put a lot of pressure on them with what they've got, especially if they're doing some blitzes and things. I think they're going to be better off with Samson Ebicom at defensive end than they were with Eric Armstead the first time around, because Armstead has a tendency when he's at that end to get beat outside and lose contain. Ebicom's much better at containing that. So I think the guy to watch really this week as far as the outside contained is going to be more of Nick Bosa. Is Bosa getting beat to the outside? Because I don't think you're going to see that from Ebicom. And I would just like to see them play their big nickel look like they've done against New Orleans last year, for example, or some other teams. He plays well in that spot. He plays well along the line of scrimmage. He plays well in that tight area. When he struggles is when he's on the back end and he's got to cover a lot of area, a lot of space. Sometimes, we saw it with the touchdown on the second drive, the second touchdown play for Minnesota. And that's kind of what I would do, because right now at the linebacker, like you said, if right now the only healthy guy they have is Al-Shaair. They have Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, who, he's fine. He's like their fifth linebacker and has been all along. But beyond that, and I don't know if Terrell Adams is actually on the active roster or if he's on the practice squad. So that's kind of the direction I would go. And then you get into your nickel looks and your dime looks and things like that. And you'd have Jimmy Ward be able to play up close, and your other guy there, K'Wan Williams, plays like a linebacker too at times. So
yeah, he definitely can. Harold says that was Grant's. I don't know which idea, yours or mine. I know that I brought that up on Grant's show, the 5-2 yesterday. Not really sure which one he's talking about there.
Yeah,
there's only two. There's really only two options. You know what I mean? You don't really have a lot of other options, especially if those linebackers aren't going to play. Either you have to run 5-2 or you have to do what Jack's saying. That's kind of it. So it just comes down to a preference. And most likely what they're going to do is what Jack's saying. I just personally prefer a 5-2 look just to see something different, because most people aren't expecting that.
Yeah. And I don't know about anybody else mentioning it. I know I brought it up Tuesday night on Niner Chatter. I don't know if we had talked about it, if Grant and I had talked about it on Tuesday before that or not when we were doing our film breakdown, but I don't think so. I'm just looking to see real quick if there was anything on the chat. When we get into you got to get off anytime soon.
I've got a show here at 10:30. I can be a few minutes late though. We're good.
Okay, we'll be quick. Gav asks if the offensive line's been better without McGlinchey. I wouldn't say that. I think that the offense, what they've been doing these last few weeks, plays more to the strengths of the offensive line, because it doesn't take your offensive linemen don't have to be as skilled to be good at run blocking. If you've watched Tom Compton and Daniel Brunskill in pass protection the last 3 weeks, they're not any better. They're just as bad as they were before, and I think Compton's worse than McGlinchey. But they've been running the ball so much, you're not seeing teams be able to tee off on them with the same kind of normalcy as they were earlier on in the year.
I think it's twofold. I think one, they're running the ball. That's clear. That makes a huge difference, just like Jack said. But I also think Alex Mack has been playing better. Personally, I haven't seen him just getting blown up the way that he was in some of those games early on. I think he's playing slightly better, and that's making a big difference across the line as well. So you get McGlinchey to go out, and then Mack raises his play on top of running the ball a ton to help out the offensive line. I think that's helping as well. And maybe they're not going play action because they don't trust the offensive line. That's something else that they've completely gone away from. They think they're not going to have enough time. If Jimmy turns his back, he's not going to have enough time to get back around without getting hammered. So no pun intended. So that could be a reason why they're going strictly shotgun.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I know a couple of weeks ago, leading into the Jacksonville game, they were talking so much about how the 49ers were using shotgun, so much passing out of the shotgun, but they've been much more balanced the last 2 weeks. It's almost like the press
Mhm.
like alerted them to something that they were doing, that they were like, oh shoot, we need to be a little more, because they did throw the ball quite a bit from under the center last week, and I know they do it out of the gun too. That's one of the better parts of what's happened. They've been over the last 3 weeks. They've been much more balanced across the board. It's helped out their offense and it's helped out their defense. I think that's the best thing. And then real quick, Luke says Sherfield secret weapon versus Seahawks. Yeah, absolutely. He's another one that's got to step up. That catch he made on the third
Really
and
good
4.
catch.
Yeah, when you watch that on the All-22, it doesn't show nearly how difficult that catch was, because on the TV copy you can see the guy's hand getting up in there and they're fighting for the
Hmm.
ball. It was a really good catch. So, all right, I know we got to jump off, so let's jump over really quick. Can we hit this one really quick? Are you
Yeah, let's
afraid?
do it.
Are you afraid? this one is. This one is. This one is about. Are you afraid? Are you? Is there a team in the NFC that you're afraid of with the 49ers? Or is there anybody in the NFC that worries you?
There's one team. There's definitely one team, and for me, that's the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's all about matchups. Styles make matchups. Styles make fights. This is the way it always works. Tampa could play Green Bay, let's say, and they could lose that game. Stylistically, it could be a bad matchup for them. And the 49ers could beat Green Bay, but lose to Tampa Bay. And I think that Tampa, just because they can contain and really just shut down the run altogether and have proven that for a few years now, it's going to be tough sledding for the 49ers. If it comes down to Jimmy's right arm versus Tom Brady's right arm, we all know which direction we're going. So that is the one that really scares me. The rest of those teams, I think that they can beat. And
Yeah,
they can beat Tampa too. I think it's a bad matchup.
I on that one, it's. I would say I don't think there's a team that. When I look at the teams in the NFC, I don't think there's one that scares me when it comes to who the 49ers match up with, especially if they're able to play the style of play that they've played the last 3 weeks. If Deebo Samuel's healthy, if they get to the playoffs and Deebo Samuel's healthy, and they're playing their normal stuff, there's not a team in the NFC that I'd be worried about them playing, or I don't feel like they have a chance. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think that they'd have a fighter's chance against any of them, because they're just so explosive on offense, and the way they take the ball out of, look at what we talked about all last week. We were talking all about Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen and Kirk Cousins and how good those guys were. We were talking 2 weeks ago about, or 3 weeks, 2 weeks before that, we were talking about, uh, Stafford and those weapons in LA has, and nothing really came of it. And the reason it didn't is because they just don't have the ball enough. And even on, you do have to give the 49ers defense some credit, because Kirk Cousins played really good in the first half, and he didn't play good in the second half. And Garoppolo
Mm-hmm.
struggled in the first half, and he was better as that went on. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I guess that's my one thing is, if they can play keep away from anybody, they can win. It's just I don't know if they can control the clock with their run game against Tampa. But then the flip side of me, the fan side of me says, well, maybe they can, because they would run away from Big Vita Vea, right? Because that's a big reason why a lot of teams can't run. And the 49ers are a little bit different. They leverage those edges. And so at that point, you're taking Vita Vea out of things, and you're saying, we're going to beat you on the edge. Can you still do what you've always done? Maybe they can't. So who knows?
yeah. If you have Deebo Samuel, you have an advantage over all these defenses, because he is so good when he gets to the sideline. You're not going to tackle him with an arm tackle. He's going to run through those, and it's impossible really to square him up with coming from those angles, the way that they run that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. I think the 49ers, there's not one. If they had to play against Arizona again, I think they'd beat them. If they had a fully healthy, if they were healthy, and I think if Garoppolo was playing and they were playing their normal style, even shoot, if in that game with Lance, if they just played their normal style, I think they win. So yeah,
It's hard. It's hard to beat anybody 3 times in a season, and Arizona's already beaten them twice. So beating them a third time would be really, really hard to do.
yeah, I think so. I don't know. That's kind of where I am on that. And then jumping over off of that to our, I'm going to answer this one real quick. Jack, what do you think about the Patriots beating the Bucks in the Super Bowl? I don't think the Bucks are going to. I don't think Patriots are going to get to the Super Bowl. We'll see. I don't think they're going to get there though. I know
I
you
don't
got
think so either, but they got a chance, Jack. That's
Oh,
that
they do.
team. Yeah, and there's nobody in the AFC. To me, there's nobody in the AFC that's. It's just like the NFC. There's just no dominant team over there, so they really could.
If their defense keeps playing the way it's been playing, it's going to make them really hard to get beat.
Absolutely.
Harold, thank you very much for the donation and letting us know you like our show. And last but not least, real quick, your prediction for Sunday.
Okay, so I am a little bit worried about this game because no matter how down the Seahawks are, it's still Russell frickin' Wilson, and that's going to be hard to beat. That being said, I think that the 49ers should win this one, even without Debo, even without Fred. But I also have a weird feeling that the 49ers are going to throw more than what they should. And so that gives me pause for concern as well. Without Debo there to help on the edge, maybe that helps out Seattle, Bobby Wagner, and they're able to slow down the 49ers run game a little bit more. And then Shanahan gets away from it. And also, I think Seahawks pass defense can be had. And so I just worry that they might fall in love a little bit with the pass, and that might bite them in the end. That being said, I am going to go with the 49ers to win 27-24 and put a nail in the coffin of the whole era that they've had there with Russell Wilson, because he's gone after this year. That's wishful thinking.
Okay. I agree with a lot of what you're saying in terms of I kind of can see where the 49ers are going to be a little more pass happy in this game. That's how they started off the game the first time around, right? They were definitely more pass happy in that. I think this one's going to be a 49er victory. Not quite as many points. I'm going to say 23 to 17. 23 49ers 17 for the Seahawks. Again, though, I think my biggest worry is that they do get away from the run. I think their defense needs them to pound the ball and run the ball like they've been doing. The one thing that I'm going to say, and I put this out there on Twitter, so I'm going to put this here. Last year, if you remember, the 49ers had two big wins against the Rams and the Patriots. In those two games, they had 37 carries in both of those games, which was their most attempts of the seasons last year. So they had a big win in those two, and then they go up to Seattle, and what did they do? They throw the ball 40-something times. So, and part of that too was, the running backs had all gotten injured, and Debo Samuel had been injured, and all those kind of things. I don't necessarily foresee that happening this time, but I could see it happening if they don't stick with their formula that's gotten them to where they are right now. Run the ball. Take your shots with Garoppolo, but make sure you get back to the run game. Try to keep this thing 50-50. I know that's not necessarily how you coach it as you're in the middle of it, but you need to have the run game be a big focus, or that intent to be powerful in the run game all week as you're getting ready for this game, because it's going to be a tough one. I don't think it's anywhere. I don't think it's going to be a blowout like some people think.
I don't think so either. It's still Seattle in Seattle with Russell Wilson. I don't trust it.
Yeah.
It's a trap.
It is a little bit of a trap. And these guys they were really tight against Green Bay just a couple of weeks ago. So, and they wasn't like, it was 23-13 against a decent Arizona team a couple of weeks ago too. So,
right.
All right. So there we go. We both have them winning. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Jamaican Boy has a super chat, and it's in reference to my show last night. I told him I'm banning him from my show. So here's what happened. He said going into last week's game on my call-in show that he was worried about Debo running the ball so much, and he thought he might get injured. Well, then he's gotten injured. Then last night he brings up Mitchell getting injured, and I said, if Mitchell gets injured, you're getting a 1-week ban. So if Mitchell gets injured, that's the rule. If somebody else gets injured, that's not your fault. Although now you're bringing it up. I don't know, Jamaican Boy. We're gonna have to work through this. We'll see how it goes.
The deal is here: if Garoppolo, if both those guys get hurt, then we got to start wondering if Jamaican Boy's got like some like voodoo dolls at home or something like that he's messing around with that we don't know about. Like the guy from Major League. Remember, he had the setup going on. So. But we're both close. 23 for me, 27 for you. I think it's going to be a grind of a game.
I do too.
Hopefully the 49ers pull it out, and Gav kind of agrees with both of us. He says it's 21-17 as well. So
close.
Yep. So that's it. Remember, 49ers blew it by drafting Trey Lance. No, I didn't. Go back to the beginning.
That's 2 clips that they got now. That's perfect.
Nope. Can we stop that so it doesn't work out? Can you bring up that really good dance move you showed earlier?
The dance, yeah. There we go. That'll pull their move away from it.
That's. I mean, if you didn't see it at the beginning of the show, I don't know if are you bringing it up?
Yeah, hold on. Let me find it again. I got it right here.
It doesn't get any better. I mean, 49ers, Seahawks, and then we have this.
Okay, hold on. Here it is.
And this is if you weren't here at the very beginning, because we didn't have nearly as many people watching then as we do now. But this is pretty spectacular, and this is really, I think it's why the 49ers are continuing to win on a regular basis. It doesn't really get better than. I mean, look at that. Those are. It almost looks like CIG with one of his videos.
That is so good. I told you. What did I tell you, Jack? I said when that dance happens, I am making a GIF, and there it is. So it's for all to find on Twitter. You can use it whenever you want.
That's right. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us. Jump over to Jesse's channel. He's got a show going on right now that we've been holding him back from. That he's going to get on, and make sure you're subscribed to his channel. I think he's already over 2,000. You said this week. Is it 2,000?
Yeah, we just broke 2,000. Just broke 2,000 again. So we're climbing back up.
There you go, back over 2,000. And so if you could like this one and comment over here, but also get over to Jesse's channel and check him out and do your stuff over there, that'd be fantastic. We appreciate y'all coming on for joining us. Anything else you want to say real quick?
That's it. Last Second Sports. Tap in.
All right. Have a great night, everybody.